Earlier today, I did get 5 heifers taken over to the sale barn. I took a look at them while they were in the pen, and the whole thing with these heifers is that I really like to liquidate my heifers a little bit earlier. These steers, I'll take them up to 700-800 pounds, but the heifers, I really want to liquidate them at about 600, 650. And so I think that the 5 heifers, the 5 of them combined, are going to hit the scale at about 600 pounds. The smallest one was probably about 5.25, 550, and the biggest one was probably about 650, 6.25, 650. And then the other 3 were about 600 pounds. So I would think that the 5 of them are going to hit the scale at about 575, 600, and that's perfectly fine. These heifers, I want to liquidate them a little bit earlier, and so I did go ahead and take the 5 heifers to the market this morning, and I got them taken to the sale barn, and I got that squared away. Here in about a month, it'll be time to start growing grass, and I will, and I got these bigger steers. The steers are definitely bigger than the heifers, okay? The steers are definitely bigger than the heifers. The steers right now, the bigger ones are probably about borderline 700 pounds. I probably have 2 or 3 in there right now that are about 700 pounds. And I will liquidate the animals whenever I need money, right? That's the whole thing. I liquidated animals today because I have a use for the money, right? My whole thing about money is that if I need money, I will pay myself the money, right? That's all there is to it. Other than that, I will just leave my money in my investments to grow. And so the whole thing about me needing some money right now, the whole thing about me, making sure I have some money right now is so that I have enough money to clear the land. I'm getting ready to clear land. I'm set for August 10th. I said August 10th is the day that I will be clearing land, and so I'll be out there on August 10th clearing land. And here, maybe I've been watching some of these weather people on YouTube, and they've been saying that maybe we're in for an earlier fall here in this Central Texas area. The fall may come here a little bit early this year. Last year, the summer was blazing hot, and it was blazing hot for a very long time. This year, they're saying that the fall may get here a little bit early this year. And so, with everything going on right now, I effectively, and I got, I'm sitting on money, and here within about a month, I'll have, I'll reinvest my money. I'm use the money to clear the land. I'll use money to clear the land and all that stuff. And so I'm set to go. All right, everything that, I'm getting things done one at a time. I've said this is exactly what I'm looking to do, right? These are the objectives that need to be met, right? I've always said that I'm not even going to call it a goal. It's not my dream. It's an objective, right? This is exactly what I'm looking to do. This is exactly what I'm going to do. And this is exactly when I will do it, right? If anything changes, I will say so. And this is also one of those things that, and I've always said that when it comes down to all this stuff, you need to realize that, one of the big things about things like this, and I've always said that, like me, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And if I have a change of plans, I say so, right? And that's very important. This is one of those things that, I've always said that it's one of those things that you can't, it's not anything that costs money. It's more of just, this is kind of an important, thing, right? If you say you're going to do something, you need to do it, right? You should keep your word. All right, and I've always said that a majority of people are idiots. Don't ask me why. I'm not saying that to be a horrible person. I'm saying that, legitimately almost everybody just turns out to be a flat out idiot, and I don't understand why. All right, it's like, and that's one of the things about me. If I say I'm going to do it, I do it, right? I say I will do it on August 10th, and I will do it on August 10th. If something happens and whatever, A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z happens, then I will say there is a change of plans and maybe I need to push it back a week, right? But I am on track to get everything done. I said I was going to start re-expanding my herd starting this month. I will start putting in efforts for re-expansion, right? And one of the big efforts, one of the big things that needs to happen for me to re-expand my herd is for me to start clearing up land, all right? I am looking to clear up more land. I'll probably get another, a good chunk of land cleaned up here, over the next couple of weeks. And within the next month or so, I would say that it's probably gonna be less than 30 days, I will be ready to grow grass. I'll be growing grass. And I'll be growing grass here within about 30 days. And when I start growing grass, I will distribute the smaller animals out to the lease properties. I will have bigger animals that are ready for market. I will liquidate the bigger animals, and I will reinvest the capital. Okay, and I will start growing the size of my herd. I am set to do very well for myself. I speak about this all the time. It just is what I'm not bragging about it. I am just telling you the truth, all right? The whole thing about money, I say this about money all the time, is that money is not an opinion. Our money is not an opinion. Nobody cares about an opinion, right? I've always, the whole thing about, nobody cares about an opinion. All right, nobody cares about an opinion. Oh my God, well, I don't think you make that much money, and nobody cares. At the end of the day, it just is what it is. I legitimately make money, large amounts of money, and it is what it is. And if you are dead set on being poor forever, then have fun being poor forever. I will legitimately watch you die poor. If you watch this and you still have, and you're just effectively a complete idiot, you're going off in the wrong direction entirely. I legitimately have one of the best balance sheets on the entire planet. I can almost guarantee it. I have one of the best balance sheets on the entire planet. And if you legitimately look at something like this and you think something moronic, even after everything, I show you everything. I give you details about the commodity markets. I show you how I run my business. I show you my checks. I show you how I do everything. And at the end of the day, you still go in the wrong direction. Then have fun dying poor. I'm serious. This is not a joke. I've always said being poor is not some incredible, wonderful thing. You're not poor because you're an incredible person. You're not poor because you're some amazing person and you're buddy pals and you're on a trip to Disneyland. You're not there. That's not why you're poor. All right. If you're in a very clear indicator, if you legitimately look at a business like mine, if you genuinely look at a business like mine and you think that this is losing money, I don't know how you came to that conclusion, but if that is what you came to, that is your conclusion, then you're poor. I legitimately have one of the best balance sheets on the entire planet. I can guarantee it. All right, one of the best. I don't even know how much money I make. I don't. I make a lot. All right, you have to understand that this business, I start these businesses by myself. All right, nobody cares what you think. All right, if you're in a situation where you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, I guarantee it, you're almost homeless, and that is not funny. The whole thing about it is if you're average, you have it in yourself to learn how to do almost all of this. Right? You do. At the end of the day, you do. If you're born average, which is almost everybody, you can learn how to do almost all of this. 90% of it. And even if you do, which you probably won't, I have not met anybody that even gets to the 10% mark. All right? I have not met anybody that even gets to the 10% mark. It's whatever, right? I mean, if I have whatever, I don't even know anybody that even gets to the 10% mark. All right, most people can't even make whatever, most people can't even make I don't even know how much money, I legitimately generate. I don't know, because you have to understand that I am a first generation farmer and I do this stuff all by myself. If I get put on a piece of land by myself and you came back 2 weeks later, it would have turned into a cattle farm. It might not even take me 2 weeks. It might take me 2 days, right? I'll just clear up 50 acres and then I'll start farming the 50 acres and then I'll clear up more land as I need it. All right? I mean, it's not some debatable thing. I don't know how else to, and I've always said, okay, and in all honesty, if you bring home less than $40,000 a month, and here's the thing, my income is going to skyrocket. my income will skyrocket upwards. I may legitimately, and I will probably end up taking leverage before the end of the year. I probably will. I will probably end up taking leverage before the end of the year. My income is skyrocketing. My income is going upwards. My revenue, my business revenue is increasing very quickly. Very quickly. I may even end up more than doubling the size of my business by the end of the year. All right, my revenue, my income is going up very quickly. All right, and I've always said, if it is what it is, if you bring home less than $40,000 a month, you make less money than me. It's not debatable. It's not some debatable thing. If you bring home less than $40,000 a month, then congratulations, you make less money than me. It is what it is. You want to talk to my lawyer about it, have fun. All right, I don't know what else to tell you. Have fun dying poor, all right? It doesn't matter to me. And I'm not saying this to be a malicious person. At the end of the day, to me, it's almost pathetic. Now, how do you end up in a situation where you're doing so horribly and you're convinced that you're doing well? How does that even happen, right? Like, if you're in that situation, you're legitimately doing so poorly, it's borderline idiocy. You're legitimately doing so poorly, it's borderline pathetic, and you are convinced that you're doing well. How is that even possible? I mean, how is that even possible? I fell out of heaven to 7 and my life is a magical journey. How is that even possible? Me, I show you my results. I show you how I do my deals. I show you how I do all of this, right? This is how I made a deal for more land. This is a check that I brought home. This is how much money I brought home last month. This is how much money I brought home 2 months ago. Boom, 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 check, right? I show you my check. Oh, there's $32,000 on this check. Oh, I made $44,000 on this month. Oh, I made $38,000 on this month. Oh, I made whatever. I show you my checks, right? Money's not debatable. And it doesn't matter. If you end up I fell out of heaven to 7 and my life's a magical journey, have fun dying poor. But to me, it's borderline pathetic. Like, you're gonna be poor for the rest of your life. I hope you're okay with that, because and I've always said, the whole thing about being poor, getting out of being poor, right? It's very easy. A lot of people don't understand this. And the whole thing about money is that you don't need a large amount of money to not be poor. That's not how it works. If you have a large amount of money and you're still poor, you can still be an idiot with money. You could still end up losing all of your money. You can. It happens all the time. Right? And the whole thing about money is, once you get to a point where you're not concerned about money, that's all that really matters. That's how I see it. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. It's whatever. At that point, it's whatever. If you're genuinely not concerned about money, you have to put yourself in a situation where you are genuinely not concerned about money. And if you are an idiot, you will always be concerned about money, because you will always do things that lead you to be poor. Always, right? Even if you have no money, it doesn't matter, because you could be broke, right? You're not poor, you're just broke. I mean, if I come back in 6 months, you'll have made whatever, an extra 50 grand. You'll have figured something out, right? And I've always said, the big idea of making money is to do it via assets, right? Do it via an asset. Find a good asset. Right? If it's a piece of land, take it to a bank and ask the banker what your land is worth. All right, ask them. All right, go to the bank and show them your deal. They will tell you what, they will appraise the thing for you. Right? I mean, there are many assets that you can buy that I would consider to be good assets. You can buy a business. You can buy an interest in a business. You can buy an equity stake in a business. You can invest into a business, right? There are many assets and I would not buy a business under one circumstance. There is only one circumstance where I would buy a business, and that is what and when. If you can make the business do better That's the only time. If if you're not going to do that, why would you even waste your time running a business? Just invest into a different business. If you're going to invest into a different business and you have no idea what's going on, and it's going to take you, it may take you 5 or 7 years to figure something out, what can you invest in right now that will at least you're buying a good asset? The S&P 500, right? Buy the S&P 500 and put money in the S&P 500 until you figure it out. All right, and then you can invest in whatever company you want. Right, there are a lot of things to invest in, and just I'm just flat out honest about it. It just is what it is. I effectively make more money than anybody on the entire planet. Everything costs me nothing. I can almost guarantee that I will end up more than doubling the size of my business by, maybe by the end of the year, if I'm, sometime between the end of the year or by March of next year. I will end up more than doubling the size of my business. I will end up more than doubling it. All right, I'm doing very well for myself. I may even end up tripling it or quadrupling it. I don't exactly know yet. I'm gonna go and one of the things that I have to do is go to the bank and talk about getting myself new loans. I need new lines of credit. All right, that's one of the things that I'm looking to do. And when I have my new lines of credit and I figured out and I've taken a look at my balance sheet and I figured out exactly what I'm going to do, I will tell you what I am going to do, and then I will do it. All right, but it's not funny. If you're in I fell out of heaven a 7 in my life's a magical journey mode, you're going to be poor for the rest of your life. Have fun. Nobody cares about your worthless situation. This is also one of the things that I talk about, the whole thing about communicating like a rich person, right? Should you be communicating about your opinions? Well, I think this and I thought that. Is that something that you should be communicating? Right? What is something that rich people legitimately talk about? Every rich person deep down, every rich person loves assets. I guarantee it. Jeff Bezos loves assets. If you showed up to Jeff Bezos and you were a some kind of a rocket building genius, and you had some way to make his rocket more efficient, you had some way for to generate a new asset, a new rocket ship, he would love that. I guarantee it. Talk about assets and don't present worthless deals, right? I've always said, don't give people worthless deals, right? Don't give people worthless deals. When you communicate your deals, you should be somebody who thoroughly understands the deal that you are offering. Make sure that you actually understand the deal that you are offering. Like me, if I say that I can clear this land, and if I can clear this land and I can run cattle on it, then I better be able to clear the land and run cattle on it. Right? I mean, don't offer worthless deals to people. Right? Rich, and I've always said the whole thing is that, the thing about being rich and the thing about doing well, right? The thing about being a well-to-do individual is that, I don't save people, all right? I don't save people. All right? Warren Buffett doesn't save people. Elon Musk does not save people. All right? There is no saving people. All right, by the time, if you've become poor, you are going to be poor for the rest of your life. I guarantee it. I can almost guarantee it. If you're not concerned about money, then that's fantastic. But you should not be in a situation where you are, just completely going in the wrong direction. And then you say you're not worried about money. Oh, I'm $150,000 in debt, but I've just completely stopped paying off my student loans. And I've just completely stopped paying for this. And I've stopped paying for that. And I'm not worried about it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, putting yourself in a good financial situation to a point where you're not concerned about money anymore. That's what I'm talking about. All right, me, I don't worry about money. I mean, I don't worry about money. There are other more important things for me to worry about. How big of a bulldozer should I use to clear this land? Once I've cleared this land, when I liquidate my animals and I reinvest the capital, how big do I believe my herd will get? right? If my herd gets to this size, how much should I take a loan for when I go to the bank to leverage against my assets? That's the kind of stuff that I think. I don't worry about money. I know at the end of the day that it is, if the money is whatever. The money's what I don't worry about money. In terms of money, and I don't worry about money because I do very well for myself. My income is skyrocketing. My business is doing drastically better. Every month that goes by, my business continues to do better. All right, I do very well for myself. All right, and in terms of a realistic sense, I legitimately probably have one of the best balance sheets on the entire planet. All right, on the entire planet. When it comes to farming, I legitimately take a dump on people. It's not funny. All right, like if you legitimately, and I've always said the whole thing about this is that it's not a joke. If I was put on a piece of land with effectively anybody on the entire planet, I would more or less make everybody look homeless. I guarantee it. All right, and at the end of the day, money talks. It just is what it is. I make a massive amount of money. I may legitimately end up more than tripling the size of my business by March of next year. More than tripling it. I may even quadruple it. I don't know. I don't exactly know what's going to happen. I don't. But I'm going to definitely 100% more than double the size of my business by March of next year. 100%, all right? And if anything changes, I will say so. I am doing very well for myself. Extremely well for myself. I legitimately have one of the best balance sheets on the entire planet. And it is what it is. I don't care about your opinion. It doesn't matter to me. I don't know what else to tell you. If you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, you're going to die poor. Have fun with that. Legitimately. That's what's going to happen. This is not funny, right? This is not a joke. You're going to die poor. And at the end of the day, I will watch you die poor. I'm rich. I'm legitimately I make a large amount of money, and the amount of money that I am making is skyrocketing upwards. I don't care, right? Have fun. You want to be poor? If you are dead set on being poor for the rest of your life, then have fun being poor. I will watch you die poor. I don't save people. Warren Buffett doesn't save people. Elon Musk does not save people. All right, I don't save people. Have fun dying poor. It doesn't matter to me. And it's the whole thing about not being concerned about money. It's a very good, if I, and I've always, and I've said, Mr. Earl is a good example of this, right? You don't need some large amount of money, right? You don't need some large amount of money to not be worried about money. In all honesty, if you start, and I use this as a very realistic example, because the most important thing is that you learn to not be an idiot. Almost everybody, when they have money, they will become an idiot. Right? You'll do idiotic things with the money, and then you'll go right back to go right back to having nothing. You may even have ruined your life forever. Legitimately, you might have. There's a possibility. You went massively into debt for personal expenses, and then congratulations, you're in some unrecoverable situation. Right? And but in all honesty, once you have learned to not be an idiot, when you start bringing home about $15,000 a month, and you can systematically do that via assets, right? I've always said, look into making money with your asset. Look at the asset to produce the return, right? This is the big problem with something like Bitcoin and gold, is that the asset Bitcoin does not produce anything. Gold does not produce anything. Right? It's like if you're legitimately looking to just, look at the asset for the return. Gold is a good asset, okay? Gold is a good asset. I'm just saying gold does not produce anything, but gold is a good asset. I would put gold in the category of a good asset, but there are assets that the value of the asset is tied to what it produces. Like if you have a rental property and you can fix up the rental property, and when you take the rental property in its current state to the bank, and the banker tells you, well, this property is worth this, we will appraise the property at this, and then you take a look at that number and you go and you negotiate a deal with the owner of the property, and the owner of the property says, well, and you can get a price under the appraisal value, and you fix up the property, and when you fix up the property, there is a positive amount of positive equity in the deal because you fixed up the property and you raised the rents and you filled an occupancy, or you filled 2 occupancies, right? That's what I mean by, or like if I saw a farm that was for sale, and this farm was like a corn farm, and I've always said, if you're growing corn in Texas, why would you grow corn in Texas? Right? Granted that you're not like on the panhandle where there's actually water, right? I mean, it's like if you're like in like the middle of like, just, I guess what people would just consider average Texas. It gets blazing hot in the summer. You don't have hardly any groundwater, and and et cetera, right? Your corn probably, maybe if you're fortunate, you get 120 bushels an acre. Why would you grow corn? Why? Right? I mean, you're legitimately in like the best area. You're in a cattle gold mine, right? You are in a cattle gold mine. Right, you can grow, hay. You're in a cattle and hay gold mine, and it's like one of the worst areas to grow corn, and you're sitting there growing corn. Why? What's the point? If you have some very, very reasonable reason for doing it, because it's like at the end of the day, if you legitimately need some corn, you can just go and buy it from a commodity broker. Why would you grow it? Right, just grow grass and put your cattle on the grass. But I mean, like if I took a look at a farm and it was something like that, right? Here's a farm, and they're for whatever reason that you're in Central Texas and you're not running any cattle, and this farm is being sold, and they have it's like a 5,000 acre farm, and they're maybe growing 3,000 acres of whatever, everything except for cattle and and hay, and they got 2,000 vacant acres. And they're selling the property at a multiple of at a multiple of the earnings from the grain business, and they're not running any cattle. If I saw a farm like that, I would buy that farm, simply because even if I just left the grain side of things alone, I could go on the 2,000 acres and just run cattle on it and make myself a boatload of money, right? And if you drive up the revenue of a business, if you increase the revenue of a business, what happens to the evaluation of the business, to the value of the business? What happens? It goes up, right? Right, it's not complicated. If you have a business if you can get into a business and you can make the business do better, that business will be worth more money. It's simple, very simple. Businesses that make large amounts of money and are, when you look at the future of the business is set to make more money in the future, and it's going to do better in the future. That business has a higher multiple. If you have a business that is effectively making the same amount of money every single year for a long period of time, and it's still in the net positive, that business is worth maybe 3 or 5 times the earnings. If you have a business that is doing drastically better, like I am legitimately looking at this thing, and I am looking at this thing, and I am saying this thing may go over 200% growth over the next 8 months. Over the next 7 months, I may legitimately have 250%. I may legitimately have over 200% growth in the next 7 months. Right? Well, then that business is worth more money. My assets are pristine. I'm effectively a value add commodity trader. Right? My assets are pristine. All right, like if I took a look at a business and I legitimately took a look at a business and I felt like I can objectively make this business do better, that's the only time that I would buy a business. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to buy a business to reap the rewards. You can invest into a business, right? Why would you run a business if you're not looking to do better? If you're not looking to make the business do better, why would you buy a business? Why would you even think about running a business? And if in a very realistic way to look at this is think about it like farming. If you and I were, and I've always said, there was no hard feelings in business. It just is what it is. I'm not a malicious person. You know, if you want to know what it's like to do something like this, then go and do it. Nobody cares about an opinion. If you got put on a piece of land with me, if I got put on a piece of land with anybody on the entire planet, and it was just a raw piece of land, I would effectively rip everybody apart. It wouldn't even be close. Everybody would more or less be a homeless person. All right, I guarantee it, you would end up closer. Almost anybody on the planet will end up closer to homeless than anything like this. I will rip you apart. I'm in no hard feelings. It is what it is. I'm not going to suck so that you feel better for yourself. I'm not going to go and do poorly so that you feel better about yourself. No, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and do anything like this. I guarantee it. Focus on getting to the 10% mark. If you get to the 10% mark, money already begins to become negligible. When you're at the 10% mark, it already becomes negligible. You don't need to, if you legitimately want to get to something like this, have fun. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to work on it for the next 15 years of your life. There's over a 99.9999999% chance that you end up closer to homeless than anything like this. It just is what it is. Let's see it. Talk is cheap. All right, you don't like it, you can talk to my lawyer about it. Have fun. Guarantee it, you're practically a bum. It's not funny, right? To me, it's borderline pathetic. It's borderline idiotic. You have a person who has magically just one day convinced themselves, oh my God, I was born to do this. I was born to be a farmer, and I'm going to go on a magical journey because I fell out of heaven at 7. And then you're not even getting to the 10% mark. To me, that's borderline pathetic. It's borderline idiotic. And at the end of the day, there is no reason for that. If you actually went and actually put in some effort and learned how to do some of this stuff and actually put in some effort to do better for yourself, there is no reason why you cannot get into the 10% mark. And if you got to the 10% mark, money becomes negligible. You can practice for free. Practice your entire life. You can work on it your entire life and never worry about money. Because everything that you would need for your business would come from the business. You won't have to worry about money anymore. All right, but if you're in a situation where you're losing money slowly over a long period of time, that's the worst situation. That's one of the worst situations. If you legitimately believe that everything is impossible, that's one of the worst situations. If you are legitimately looking at my farm and you think that this does not make money, that is horrible. I legitimately have one of the best balance sheets on the entire planet. On the entire planet. My business will more than, I will grow my business by more than 200% in the next 7 to 8 months. More than 200%. I will more than double my revenue over the next 7 to 8 months. I do very well for myself. I'm effectively just a value-add commodity trader. I utilize pristine assets. My balance sheet is filled with pristine assets. All right, my assets are pristine. I raise commodity-type animals. I raise number 1 to 1.5 type medium large frame animals to a commercial standard. I do very well for myself. I do extremely well for myself. All right, and at the end of the day, it just is what it is. If you are going to be poor, I will legitimately sit here and watch you die poor. I'm not going to go and be poor with you. Have fun with that. I'm rich. You want to, if that hurts your feelings, you can talk to my lawyer about it.